Hi, everyone. I'm so happy that you're joining us. I'm Marguerite Ro. I'm the State Director for AARP Washington, and I'm here to kick off our Caring for Caregivers conversations. As the State Director, I'm getting to meet people from all across the state and being able to hear their amazing stories and what they've experienced, what they hope for, and how they contribute to making our communities a place that aging is easy, better, and healthy. And so today we thought we would kick this off with a fabulous conversation around healthy aging. And I want to introduce you to somebody who I've worked with for now over 10 years and who has just been so remarkable, and I've learned so much from him. And I hope you love him as much as I do. His name is George Dix. George, thanks for coming. I would love folks to get to know you, and I'd like you to introduce yourself in the way that you actually would love to be known and introduced as.
Thank you so much, Marguerite. It's an honor to be asked to share my observations and thoughts about this process we call aging. And I'll start out in a little bit of an odd way. I was born to 16-year-olds. And yes, my parents were 16 when I came into this little world. And the gift that the universe gave me were a couple of fantastic grandparents. One was my grandmother on my father's side, Grandma Lou, and my grandfather on my mother's side, Granddaddy. And they were both fantastic people who, for some reason or other, embraced me. Actually, I know why. I was the first grandkid. And not only the first grandkid, but the first grandkid for a whole generation of about 30 more kids. Eventually got to be that big a community. My cousins and all of that. So for the first 4 years of my life, I spent most of my time with one or the other of my grandparents rather than my real parents, because my dad, I was born on an Army base, and he actually joined the Army at 16. Went to Korea, earned his stripes in the field in the Korean War. My mother was an Army wife at that time. But again, they were also teenagers, and as you know, teenagers, they're not the people to be raising kids. So when I was 4, however, I got returned to them. and that's always, that's a whole nother story. Well, I'll just put it that way. But that inspired my connection with older adults. From all through my life, I've had strong relationships with older adults, whether they were like, again, in their 20s or 30s, my aunts and uncles. But I love older adults. And when I took on my professional career, for some reason or other, again, I think this is part of it, is I gravitated toward working with older adults. And it's been a joy. I have met some of the most phenomenal people in this job that I've had. So I'm a geriatric mental health specialist, and I've gone out and worked in nursing facilities. We run groups and all of that stuff at our clinic. But the joy about working with older adults is, unlike other age groups, they've lived a whole life. They've had successes, they've had failures, they've had all kinds of relationships, they've got secrets. That's right. They've got mysteries. When my father died, and you kind of go through the stuff and get, well, we found this ukulele. And nobody knows what the connection is between my dad and this ukulele, but I cherish it and I keep it as part of the mystery of life. And I just recently buried my little baby brother. He was 61. I discovered him to be a phenomenal person. I mean, literally. I've got pictures of him with Senator Warnock preaching at Ebenezer Baptist Church on Sunday morning. And for those of you who don't know, that was Martin Luther King's church. And I was able to provide, so I've just come back from 3 months essentially in Georgia, going through his decline as a caregiver. The hospital was terribly understaffed. My family was not prepared, like most families. We all stumble upon this role, or we all have it shoved upon us, this caregiver role. And I was fortunate enough to have some background and knowledge to be able to help my brother tell his story. That's one of the really important things about this stage of life. And I want to make sure we understand that after 60, 65, what we'll call older adulthood is distinctly a different stage of life. It is not about dementia. I want to be very clear about that. We do have cognitive changes because just like we wrinkle, we maybe need a little more sleep, or we encounter things like sleep disturbance as a more prominent part of our life. I would like to remind us all that at 10, at 30, at 50, we are preparing our bodies and our minds for old age. Everything we do in terms of diet, the habits that we develop, whether they're good, bad, or otherwise, they are forming our bodies, they're forming our cognitive set, they're forming the way we look at the world that will be vivid in old age. Again, old age, let's say starting in 50s, and we won't call that old age, we'll call that middle age, okay? But what happens there is you begin, we've had books written about competency and when people develop skills, and I like to think that at 72, I'm a better clinician than I was at 25, even though I was more academically, perhaps could pass the test better than I could now. But what's really important, though, is that in those years, I have acquired older adults in general, 55-year-olds, become experts at their field. They are deeply interested and invested, and they're about sharing that knowledge because that validates who they are. I want to make sure that we understand that part of mental health is having a sense of competency, a sense of well-being, a sense of meaning in everyday life, and a place in the world. So, harking back to my grandparents, they weren't grandparents until I came along. And they both stepped right into that role. And this is, again, these were two people who didn't especially know each other, but they had a common focus and a common interest, and they developed a very strong relationship vis-a-vis this connection. So I saw them step into those roles, and they modeled those things for the rest of the family, actually, not just me. And I just feel like the most honored recipient of their gratis, their love, their energy, their interest, and it did last throughout my entire life and their entire lives. I was glad to be able to have a role of serious support to the family when that came their turn to experience the decline that comes sometimes in late life. So I want to really emphasize that when I say you're creating your old age in your everyday activities, again, your nutrition, your diet prevents you from getting the opportunistic diseases, the chronic illnesses, i.e. the classics, hypertension. That's because I sit around on my butt all day and watch TV, and I eat the high-fat foods, and I get that cholesterol in my veins and all of that stuff, and because the community around me supports being sedentary. One of the challenges in a city like ours, Seattle, is sidewalks. So we don't have to think about complex things or medical conditions, but just sidewalks. Feeling safe about the community you're transiting. We know about those bumpy sidewalks that have cracks and are, out of shape and a fall risk. Mm-hmm. We don't want older adults to fall. That is the number one thing in our clinic that, well, I won't say it's the number one thing, but it's right at the top of the list of things that we prioritize as not having happen as a result of our practice. So again, we're talking about many facets: exercise and physical well-being, diet because of what it does in terms of our energy, what it does in terms of consequences to our kidneys and our liver and other parts of our body, the adequate nutrition to get through our daily activities. The other things that we're talking about, and what's really important is I don't want to eat by myself.
Yes.
The importance of social connection.
Sharing a meal.
Sharing a meal. Sharing. We're social animals. That's what humans are. There are two things I want us to remember from today. Humans are social animals. What is it, John Donne? Sin not to know for whom the bells toll. They toll for thee. No man is an island. No woman is an island. No transgender person is an island. That's right. We're all connected to the world. And that connection, I mentioned role earlier, my grandparents taking on the role of grandparents. Our roles will change over life. I was a child at one time. That was my role, to learn, to establish trust. I've been a young man in the world. I've established a career. I have a partner in life, romantic relationships. I've been a father. I was 69 when it happened, and it was only for 15 months. But I can say honestly, there's never been a greater experience in my life than for 15 months when I was the custodial parent, me and my partner, for a 5.5-year-old boy. And Andrew is our kid, let me tell you. And I never knew that experience. So that's the other thing. This doesn't stop. Life does not stop with the numbers. And I carry into my aging a constant sense of optimism, including about the crazy world that we're in. So again, without getting too far off, again, there's a physical aspect to aging. There's an emotional aspect to aging, i.e., are we maturing? Sometimes I say to my partner, we're the 72-year-olds. We have to not respond like our younger cohort does. They can get angry, do whatever they do, and not that I won't too, but my answers and my responses are now a result of 72 years of experience. I don't want to get upset about everything. I don't think I need to get upset about everything.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Is that where your sense of optimism comes from? Because I know when we've had many conversations before and we've talked about healthy aging, you actually start there with not necessarily the physical, but the staying socially connected. But there's a sense of optimism that you have about aging. Where does that come from?
You know, it's the fact that you and I have dealt with how many challenges in our lives. And when you and I are sitting here today, think about all the things that we've gone through. And yet we're sitting here calmly. We're secure. We have, or as I like to say, when I'm stressed and my partner and I are sitting there, I say, we got a roof over our head. There's food in the refrigerator. The car's got gas in it. There are people who love us. If we don't answer the phone for 2 days, somebody will come and look for the bodies, And so that sense of connection. Also, you and I know that life is not simple, and that even when we make quote unquote progress as a result of direct action, there's another counter view of the world. It's very simple. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I don't think humans are outside those bounds. So I see a fairly pessimistic world right now, but I know about young people. They know how serious the world is in a way that you and I no longer experience it. Because I'm near the end of my journey. So I do have optimism for the future for young people because it's their problem. It's their problem, and they will take it seriously.
Yeah.
You know, my friends and I often say this, and I'm sure that everybody who's listening to this has said this if they're in our age cohort. We hit the world at just the right time. Have you ever said that, Marguerite?
Yes, actually, I have. I probably have.
Yes.
I think one of the things, as I have listened to you speak, and I think this relates to younger people, is that at this stage of our lives, it's about sort of solidifying the legacy that we are going to leave.
That's exactly.
And if we do that, it also has to be one that's driven by optimism and hope and positivity, and to remember that we don't individually leave that to the world, but that together we actually have to be together in that shared vision of hope and optimism.
So one word we use is resilience. And again, that's what, a thing I will encourage people to engage in, both for ourselves and our loved ones, is something called life review. Tell me about your life. Tell me about what happened when you were in high school. Tell me what you were thinking at this stage of life. Tell me about that car you loved, etc. We try to create positive chemicals in people's brains, okay? Because that's optimism. That's right. And we want to tap into the strengths that people have. One of the problems with aging is that we perceive it in our industrial society and our industrial culture that when you stop being a machine, a functional machine part, quote unquote, retire, your value declines rapidly. In traditional cultures, you become an elder, actually your value increases vis-a-vis this is who's going, as I use my example, who nurtured me was my granddaddy and my grandmother. They are the ones who took on that responsibility. And they were thoughtful in a way that I think it's hard for 20-year-olds to be. Not because they don't mean to be, but because they're only 20. It's as simple as that. And I think there is total validity to having enough life experience, and I think that's been validated. So I am optimistic because folks are dropping into this world and they will meet the need of the world. And I don't know why I live in this world, you and I, at this time, but isn't it interesting how much social change, how much has happened, how much is anticipated, how much is resisted? And so this is a very dynamic time for us to be living in the world. And I have a responsibility to the young people in my life. So like Andrew, he was 5.5. We had 24, 365 responsibility for him. But I have lots of other nieces and nephews who I appreciate reach out from time to time to tap into what I might have experienced or learned in life. And that's the other thing. We're all unique, and yet we're all the same. So again, back to this idea of life review, and I'll give you an analogy. So a Ferrari and a Pinto both have 4 round black wheels on them. They all have steering wheels, but they aren't the same by any means in terms of the experience they're having. And so you and I can create an experience if we have more knowledge. And so that's the point of hopefully our conversations, the times that I have been a teacher and a trainer, and the fantastic amount of information that is out there on the internet about the positive aspects of aging. I always say, go Google mental health. And you know what? All you get is mental illness. If you will not, that's not what actually comes up. It's all about mental illness. We have too much of a focus on the negative. And that's again also about aging. Aging is not illness. And so we all need to become more knowledgeable about what healthy aging is, and it is not normal. So Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, these are diseases. They are not normal changes, okay? And they may be statistically higher in certain groups of people, i.e. older adults. But I know how to correct that. By that I mean we're going to help young people develop healthier habits at an early age so that they endure. You know, in our lifetime, I'm amazed at how cigarette smoking has disappeared. I could never have imagined cigarettes going away. I mean, they were in the doctor's offices when I grew up. You know, they were at the end of every aisle in the grocery store. You know, I watch old TV shows and Gary Moore, and everybody's there's puffing on the TV right in the middle of whatever else they're doing. You know, so yeah, things could change. Yes, I belong to a community where was devastated by the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 1980s. People learned to switch their behavior so that we would not kill each other, not killing the people that we loved and cared about. So with information, accurate information, non-judgmental information, we can really make good, healthy changes and more importantly, secure for ourselves a healthier maturity. I need to be good about my relationships with the people in my life. I need to nurture the young people. I need to help share information that I have learned with my colleagues, my professional colleagues, people on the bus, you know. Actually, I'm so glad that my family actually engaged me recently, but the family is usually the last people who will seek out your information. I think any professional knows that they will always be the 10-year-old in spite of, you know, a career that's been productive and well met. So I was very glad that they allowed me, and that my brother, he was 61, called upon me to be involved. In fact, he turned everything over to me, and to be responsible for securing the decisions, acting as his advocate. And those are roles. These are roles. These are roles. And again, so many older adults are now also returning to parenting vis-a-vis their adult children in this very stressed economy and under the social circumstances that prevail. And so, and that's something we should notice as a phenomena. We live in another aspect of our time that's unique is, you know, when I was born, I knew my parents, so that's one generation. So there's me, there's my parents, that's another generation. There's my grandparents. I've known my great-grandmothers. I've known at least 3 of my great-grandmothers.
Wow.
And a great-grandfather. That's already, I'm up to 4 generations. I now have nieces and nephews who are in their 40s. That's 6 generations. They have kids. Andrew was of the 7th generation. So, you know, that old idea of the 7 generations? Here it is. And this is unique to our time because we know older adults, where people are living longer by a long shot. So that's the other reason to think about healthy aging for sure, is because you're going to be here a long time.
And in that process of healthy aging, to be able to know those 7 generations.
That's right.
That role of caring for
That's
others,
right.
caring for our family,
right.
caring for our friends,
That's
has been
right.
super critical.
That's
and
right.
It's at least for me, I'll say it's probably one of the most touching roles that I think we can play.
It's the most, you know, I have a strong allegiance to ancestors. By that I mean, that's the thing I know for sure I am. I am them. I came from them. And so I have a very strong allegiance to the idea of nurturing my family. That I have a role to play in this family. I don't know how I got educated around what drove me to be educated and to pursue the life that I have, but it is a life and a set of experiences that can be very useful to my family.
And I think that the challenge that we face today is that, in fact, caregiving is not an easy task for so many, right?
It's not an easy task.
And yet it's so inextricably linked to healthy aging that our work really is to, in fact, supporting not only those who are the recipients of the care, but those who are also providing the care. And knowing that, as I think you've described, we revisit how we are caregivers throughout our lifetimes.
Yes. That's right. Because again, you're a mom at some point in your life, right? But that's not the same as being a grandmother. And it won't be the same when you are on the other side of that line. And so, again, we are also role modeling how to age in a healthy manner. So, what gift can I give my children? To be healthy. That's what I can do. That's what I can do. And so it's not just, being prepared to provide care for an older adult. No. It's like, what kind of older adult can I be? How can I be the healthiest? People confuse, what I say is, I want to die healthy, right? People say, well, why go get healthy, because we're just going to die anyway, or I'm already dealing with illness. No, I want to die feeling great. That's exactly what I want to do. It's not about time. It's not about living a long time. It is about living my life. That's right. That's about it. And that's the other thing, I need to tell my story. You and I need to be known. That's so social isolation is one of the real challenges, especially, I don't think this is confusing, coming on the heels of the pandemic. We are all having a challenge to get reintegrated into the world. I think that's real. I think that's universal. I don't think that's unique to an age group at all. In fact, we're looking at how that's problematic among young people.
Yes.
And it's even more problematic among older adults because of the transportation problem. And we don't have the wonderful institutions that my parents had, like the VFW and the other kind of social organizations that were so prominent, the bridge clubs, the bowling alley. All of those things are not as prevalent by any means, and we've changed the way we socialize. And I guess that's my greatest concern, and this is the challenge for young people, is they socialize in a virtual manner so much. It's becoming the norm, and I think what I'd like for people to understand is thought doesn't come out of nowhere. The more you do something, the more your brain wants to do it. And the more automatic, and I'm going to use an important word, thoughtless, that behavior becomes. So that coming home after work, grabbing the beer and sitting on the couch, it becomes easier to do every day. And before you know it, it's a primary response. And it becomes then a challenge to build a parallel, healthy response. So that's a really important concept, is that thought is not something that just comes out of the sky. It is a set of neural pathways that become stronger and stronger the more they're used. And when they reach a certain volume, frequency, commonality, i.e., I drive I-5 back and forth every day. I doubt if other than looking around to see that no one's going to hit me, I don't think about that. It's automatic, right? Go ahead.
It's so interesting to think that we have to practice being together. But I think that's, at the end of the day, what you're saying, and that's something that's going to be a critical component to our healthy aging.
Thank you for saying that, because that is it. It's the circle of life.
It is.
It is the circle. I'll just, in a crude way, I'll just put it very simply. I was 10 years old when my brother was born and came home from the hospital. He was 61 when he died in January. I was the first person who wiped his butt, and I was the last person who wiped his butt. And you know what? That was okay. That was totally okay. And I have this person is this magnificent person that I knew very little about in terms of his stellar accomplishments. That's one of the discoveries of being a caregiver. You know, that I'll tell you, I won't tell you the crazy thing I did. But anyway, well, I'll tell you the crazy thing I did, as a matter of fact. When my brother finally did pass, I was exhausted because I'd been spending nights at the hospital, the days, all day actually, for weeks. And but I discovered again the wonderful things this man had contributed to the world, the honors that he had received, and including seeing pictures of him with Arun Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi's grandson was on his phone and is a good friend. Senator Warnock and he preaching at Ebenezer Baptist Church on Sunday morning at a program that he organized. I could just go on, and now there's a training room named after him, a training center named after him at the Transit Authority, because he got the electric buses in town. And so I knew none of that about my little brother. And spending time with him I learned all that, and I saw the wonderful people in his life, and it totally changed my experience of him. I had been a worried big brother, like, Terry, you need to get a job and this and that kind of stuff, or you should be paid more. This man had a fantastic life. And so that's one of the joys of caregiving. So back to what I said to my mom, I went out to the graveyard and I said, Mom, one of us turned out. I said, one of your kids turned out. You raised a great man. And I've never done such a thing before.
Well, I am just going to say what a pleasure it has been to have these conversations. I just want to say thank you for sharing the stories about your brother in particular. I'm sorry that he has passed on, but how wonderful it is to learn about all of his contributions and accomplishments. Yeah. I'll just say that this is a conversation, frankly, that you and I are going to continue having. So. We're going to have this conversation because you have covered a lot of ground in terms of all of the things that we have to think about in terms of healthy aging, but you've also really reminded us that as we age, we need to stay engaged, and that we will continue to play various roles of caregiver, as well as sometimes needing a helping hand. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I just want to remind folks that we actually have resources for caregivers. And so if you go to aarp.org/caregivers WA, or Caregivers WA for Caregivers Washington, you will find information there. We hope that you've enjoyed this conversation. We're going to continue the conversation. George, it is always a pleasure to have a chance to connect with you and to learn from you. I learned a lot.
Thank you for this tete-a-tete. I really appreciate it, because I learn from you too. And what these conversations do is they awaken thoughts in my own head and remind me of things. And I hope that happens for the folks who share this experience with us. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Until
you.
next time.